One. All right, this week we are continuing to talk about lathe tooling and the cutting tools that are used in the machining processes that we do on the lathe. Now, early on, and some companies still use just traditional high-speed steel tool bits. They would look something like this. This one, of course, is one of my old ones from about 30 years ago that was ground down to a radius that I needed. But basically, all of your high-speed tool bits like this come in a blank, and then the machinist would grind the lead angle and the rake angle and grind that to the shape or the point that they needed to do their cutting tool. This is a high-speed steel tool blank here. That's just a parting tool, just narrow thin. Again, the lead angle and so forth is ground into that to provide for a part-off type cutting tool. Now, these are good for some materials. It's older technology, not really utilized too much. And moving on over, in the advent of cutting tools, we moved from high-speed steel into these, what we refer to as brazed carbide tool bits. Now, you'll notice as we got into these, we started in terms of our turning tools. There's what we refer to as a left turning tool, a neutral turning tool, and a right-handed turning tool. And of course, the neutral tools, we can cut in different shapes. All of these shapes, I've got these ground for radii. We've got the sharp corners. We could put chamfers on there. And in this case, we've got a radius as well. But those could all be kind of put into and made either a right-handed tool or a left-handed tool. So this is your right-handed tool. Basically, the cutting tool points in the same direction as the thumb, so that lets you know whether it's right-handed or left-handed. And in the middle, we have all what we have called the neutral tools. So again, brazed carbide. So you got a steel body blank. The carbide tip is basically brazed onto there. Again, older technology, not used as much in the machine tool world nowadays because we have kind of transferred over into what we refer to as inserted tools. So let's take a look over here again on the lathe. So we've got some different types of tool holders, and we've got some carbide inserts. So now we will go over to carbide inserts. The main thing I want you to know and understand this week is, again, the difference between a left-hand cutting tool, a right-hand cutting tool, and what we refer to as a neutral tool. So these are neutral tools, left hand, right hand. And here's, of course, a tool holder that has just one of the brazed carbide neutral tools that I use for chamfering here as well. So your left hand and right hand tools would be used for either facing or turning. So obviously, if both of these are turning, when we are turning towards the chuck, we're going to use a right-hand tool. If we're turning away from the chuck, or if we need to get material that's cut out of the inside where we have a hub on the left side, we would be turning away from the chuck with the left-hand tool. There's a lot more danger if we're turning away from the chuck. So there's always the chance that you could basically pull the part out of the chuck when you're turning in that direction, because all the cutting forces are going away from the chuck instead of going into the chuck. So we always we want to avoid turning away from the chuck if possible, and we always want to try to turn towards the chuck. Now, if we're talking about facing, so obviously if I'm facing and machining this way, I can't really use this cutting tool. So when we're doing facing operations, we would either want a left-hand cutting tool to cut towards center, or we would want a neutral tool. Again, and we're cutting from the outside diameter into the center when we face cut with these tools. So that kind of refers to and talks about the inserted type of tools that we need to know. You can kind of see here too that we've got we've got triangular shaped inserts, we've got diamond shaped inserts, we've got all sorts of different shapes of inserts here that would go along with this that would be used. And we'll cover more of that in the future. As we move on down to the different cutting tools that are used on the lathe, hole making is still a important part. We're drilling holes on the center. Of course, we're going to use the tailstock and a drill chuck in the tailstock to drill holes on the center. Again, we're going to start with a center drill out with the center drill, then whatever drill size we need. We might need to step up drill sizes to get to a larger size. Of course, if we need to countersink the hole, we can use different types of countersinks. If we need to open up the hole wider or make it larger, then we get into boring bars. And notice again, as we start to get into the boring bars, we would also have a left-handed and a right-handed boring bar here as well. So we'll talk more about the use of the boring bar as we start to learn how to run the machine. And of course, lastly, or well, not lastly, but we also have what we call part-off tools. So if we're doing a one-piece operation turning tool, that's basically where we're facing, turning, drilling, and then parting off. This is what we would refer to as a part-off tool as well. So that would kind of cut the part off of bar stock material if we were doing that type of operation. And then the very last type of cutting tool that we're going to go over that you need to be aware of for this class is what we call the threading tool. So now this is a threading insert that is in a thread insert holder, and of course that is attached to our tool holder here as well. So we've got different types of thread inserts that would help us to achieve different types of pitches tied in with the machine when we actually go to thread on a machine as well. So those are basically the range of cutting tools that you need to be aware of. Again, it's not real hard or difficult information, but there is a lot here that you need to kind of get to know and just become familiar with. So make sure you're paying attention, reviewing all of this material, and being able to speak our language and identify these as you go.